Good morning students. Today we are going to discuss the ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa. So why we call it as ischioanal fossa? Because this is a space which is lining on either side of the anal canal. So before discussing this topic, I would like to explain this coronal section, which is almost given in every book. So what is this coronal section? This is the rectum continuing with the anal canal. This is the circular muscle coat of the rectum, which is projecting downward into the wall of the anal canal. There is the longitudinal muscle coat. Here is the conjoint longitudinal muscle coat, which is sending the different septi in the superficial region. These septi coming and joining to the skin portion. So this is the perianal skin. Clear? Now coming laterally, so these green color, these are shown the segments of the external anal sphincter. So this region which is present in here, this is known as the subcutaneous part of the external anal sphincter. This is the superficial part and this is the deep part. Coming more laterally, this red color structure is showing the facial sheath which is enclosing this portion which is known as the ischiorectal fossa. Now more laterally you will see this is obturator internus which is present in the lateral wall, and this is the ischial tuberosity. So this region is lying between what? Between the ischial tuberosity and the rectum and anal canal. So that's why the name is ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa. Now this region which is oval shaped structure, this is the pudendal canal, which is laterally fused with this fascia which is covering obturator internus, and in upward portion it is continuing with another layer of fascia that we will discuss later on. And here on the medial side it is just continuing with the fascia which is coming from this conjoint longitudinal muscle coat. This is known as the perianal fascia. So these are the landmarks. Now coming to the ischiorectal fossa, description of it, what it basically covers. It covers the different walls of this fossa, then its contents, then what are the important recesses or spaces are seen in this fossa. Now coming to the structure of this ischiorectal fossa, it is a wedge shaped structure. So wedge has apex and base, we know it. So the base of this fossa is formed by the perianal skin. You can see here this is perianal skin, and the apex is formed by the meeting point of these facial sheath. So this is the apex portion. So this apex is formed by the one fascia which is covering the obturator internus, clear, laterally, and on this side it is the fascia which is covering the under surface of this muscle, that is levator ani muscle. So the meeting point of these two fascia, that is known as the apex of ischiorectal fossa. Now coming to the lateral wall of this fossa. Now lateral wall is formed by, as I have told you, it is formed by the fascia covering the obturator internus. And what is how the medial wall is formed? In the medial wall, what I have told you, that this is the external anal sphincter. So medial wall is basically oblique one. So it is projecting upward. The direction of the medial wall is upwards. So it is formed by in the lower portion it is formed by external anal sphincter, and in the upper portion it is formed by the inferior layer of this pelvic diaphragm. So fascia covering the pelvic diaphragm. So this is the layer which is covering the inferior surface or under surface of levator ani in the upper portion, and in the lower portion external anal sphincter, that form the medial wall of ischiorectal fossa. Clear? Now coming to the anterior wall. To understand the anterior wall, we have to see this parasagittal section. In this parasagittal section, this is the pubis bone, this is the sacrum bone, this is the levator ani muscle, coccygeus muscle, which are contributing to the pelvic floor. This is gluteus maximus muscle. Now, if we divide it in the center, this portion is coming under urogenital region, and this portion is coming under anal triangle region. If we see in my previous lecture, I have shown you that imaginary line, it divide the region into two triangles, that is urogenital triangle and anal triangle region. So our concern is this portion which is just present in the anal triangle region. Now what is this? This is Colles fascia. In this diagram you can understand, you can recall that statement that Colles fascia is attached posteriorly to the perineal body. So it is coming downward. continuing with the scrotum, then covering the penis, continuing with the anterior abdominal wall. Now this is perineal body, this region, and this is the perineal membrane. Now this perineal membrane, naturally this is the deep perineal pouch. So anterior wall or anteriorly it is formed by the posterior margin of perineal pouches. So you can see here, and it is projecting anteriorly just above the perineal pouches, and its apex can reach up to the posterior margin of pubis as the anterior recess of ischiorectal fossa. Clear? And posteriorly it is under the surface of sacrotuberous ligament. So this green color is sacrotuberous ligament. It is lining or projecting posteriorly under the surface of sacrotuberous ligament as the posterior recess. Is it clear? So these are the boundaries. Now coming to the different facial sheath in this ischiorectal fossa, what we have discussed. First is obturator fascia. So this whole ischiorectal fossa is enclosed in the facial compartment. So the lateral wall is formed by obturator fascia, then inferior layer of the pelvic diaphragm, which is forming the medial wall of this. So this is the inferior layer of the pelvic diaphragm. Clear? Then coming to the perianal fascia in this region, you can see this is the perianal fascia. So now there is another layer which is just arcing over the fat present in this region. This is known as the lunate fascia. So this lunate fascia is continuing with the downward and continuing with this fascia enclosing the pudendal canal. So this is known as the lunate fascia. And the summit of this, summit means that upper point of this is known as the tegmentum. This portion is known as tegmentum. So this is lunate fascia, which is just enclosing the different fat cells. So we can say this lunate fascia is dividing this compartment into two portions, that is suprategmental and tegmental portion. So this is how this compartment or this region is divided by this lunate fascia. Now coming to the perianal fascia, this is perianal fascia, the extension of which are just this is the extension from the lower end of the conjoint longitudinal muscle coat to the interior of the fossa. So it is going like this. So it is going from this direction. So this is the perianal fascia. So this whole region is enclosed in facial sheath. That is important. So what we have discussed, that it is a wedge-shaped space having apex and base. Base is formed by perianal skin. Apex is formed by the meeting point of the obturator fascia and inferior layer of this, which diaphragm? Pelvic diaphragm. And perianal fascia and medial wall is formed by this in the lower portion by the external anal sphincter, laterally by the fascia covering the obturator internus, and anteriorly it is continuing as the anterior recess reaching up to the posterior margin of the pubis just above the perineal pouches. And posteriorly it is running beneath the sacrotuberous ligament as the posterior recess. So all these facial sheath, they just divide the ischiorectal fossa into different compartments that I will name. This is suprategmental space, this is ischioanal space, this is perianal space. Now this perianal space is now lying between the skin and perianal fascia. What is important regarding this is the fat cells are closely packed in this region. So if any infection happen in this region, so that is quite painful. Now this you can say ischioanal space, the fat is loosely arranged. So you can say infection in this space is less painful because that is not a tight compartment. Now coming to the pudendal canal, the another name of pudendal canal is Alcock's canal. So another name of pudendal canal is Alcock's canal. Now this Alcock's canal, it extends from the, if you remember the hip bone, it extends from the lesser sciatic notch to the lateral wall of the, this you can say ischiorectal fossa. So lateral wall is formed by with this, that is you can see the in the region of the lateral wall of ischiorectal fossa, what is lying? That is, you can see here, this is the ischial tuberosity. So in this region, the pudendal canal is running on the inner side of that. So that pudendal canal, it transmits the pudendal nerve and vessels. So that is important, which is enclosed here. Now, if we discuss the pudendal canal here, this facial compartment is naturally, it is continuing laterally with what? That is obturator fascia. Clear? At the apex, it is continuing with the lunate fascia, or you can say superiorly it is continuing with the lunate fascia. Then medially it is continuing with this perianal fascia. So that fascia just encloses this region, which is occupied by the pudendal nerve and vessels. So this is about the different walls of the ischiorectal fossa. Now what is important is what are the different contents of this ischiorectal fossa. That is very important. So content, you can name it. So it is filled with the fat. Clear? So ischiorectal fat is the content, one content. Then inferior rectal vessels and nerves. Then comes the posterior sacrotal nerves and vessels. Posterior sacrotal nerves and vessels in case of males, and posterior labial vessels and nerves in case of females. Then perineal branch of the fourth sacral nerve. Then perforating branches of the S2 and S3. So that is given in your book. And then is the pudendal canal and the content of the pudendal canal. So these are the 6 contents which are very important. First is the ischiorectal pad of fat, which is very important in this region. So it just cushions the wall of the rectum. So what is happening in any in some diseases, what is happening, you can say the fat, it you can say is not present around the rectum or anal canal. So definitely if the rectum and anal canal, they are not supported on the lateral side, so the rectal prolapse it happens. So it acts as a supporting framework too. So these fat cells, they act as a supporting framework too. Now abscess formation in this region, it is detected late, but it is very dangerous because of the loose arrangement of the fat cells. So what is happening, once the abscess is formed in this region, so it may track or it may open exteriorly towards the skin. So this is one course. Clear? So sinus is formed. Then sometime what is happening, it has 2 openings. That is, one opening is within the interior of the anal canal and another opening is on the skin. Then it is known as fistula in ano. So that is basically abscess. It just find a space towards the skin as well as towards the cavity. So both the things, they are communicated, and the treatment of this you can say fistula in ano is surgical. So surgical intervention is required in that case. Next is hiatus of Schwab. There is one word, that is hiatus of Schwab. Sometimes what is happening, these fascia where they are meeting at the apical portion, that is fascia of obturator internus and this inferior layer, so they are not fused. So they are not fused in this region. So that is known as the hiatus of Schwab. What is happening in that case? So rarely the visceral organs, they can the prolapse of that pelvic organ can happen in this region. They can come in the ischiorectal fossa. So this is the important applied aspect, but this is very rare condition. So it may happen. So once the communication is there with that pelvic cavity, so they may enter here. So this is all about ischiorectal fossa. So my main concern was just to make you understand so what this coronal section and what this parasagittal section depict basically. So the students, they find difficulty in correlating these things, so how they are happening. So my aim is just to summarize the things. Thank you very much.